33% of American families have special needs children. That is literally 1/3 of our population. So you are in excellent company if you are a parent of a special needs child, because there are so many other people that have the same experiences of you that you do and can help you through this national dialogue that we're creating. And Jeri, my sister Jeri here is going to talk to you about her journey as a parent of a special needs child. And the greatest fear is, what will happen to my child when I'm not here? Followed by, how can I give my child the best life possible while I am here? Correct, Jeri?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
so as a parent, and I was a single parent, um, and my ex was not heavily involved with any of the children. I mean, he saw the boys every other weekend, not so much my daughter, but that's neither here nor there. Really, I always looked at my role as a parent as the person that needed to make my kids independent. That was my role, whether they were special needs or not. My role is to make them independent. And so it's always the way I approached the kids. And even with John, um, I tried to have him make his own decisions whenever possible. And that this small things as, picking out your own clothes, deciding on where you want to eat, decide just whatever decisions he could make on his own, I would let him make those on his own, except for this one time when he was in third grade, his teacher called me and she said, Jeri, we were on a first name basis. She taught all three of my kids. Jeri, do you know what John wore to school today? I said, of course I know what he wore to school today. I saw him walk out the door. She said, well, apparently when he gets to school, he takes off what you knew he wore, and underneath is a dirty t-shirt. I said, oh, okay. Well, that's not all right. So,
Well,
yeah.
okay. Your children, her children are this year will be 42, 40, and 38.
Mhm,
John, being the middle child, special needs, will be 40 this year.
mhm.
You recognize that he needed some testing around age 3, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yep. And that's what
Okay.
we found out.
And your former husband was a little resistant to that,
Mhm,
correct? Which is
mhm.
not atypical in a lot of families. Okay, the first thing I want to circle back to as I proceed through this conversation is you raised your kids to be independent. I mean,
Mhm.
that's amazing. And I'm coming from a divorce mediator point of view, since this is what I do in my other world, is divorce mediation. And I listen to people who have special needs kids that we have to discuss with child support after they're 18 and graduated from high school, how they're living now, how each parent in their individual homes can support them. And that's very difficult, Jeri, because not every parent is set up to deal with a special needs child. True or not true?
True. And not every parent can let go.
Mm.
John has friends whose child is more functional than he is, can read better than he can, and yet has never gone to the mall by themselves, has never shopped without their parent, has never gone to a movie without their parent, has never done anything without a parent. And that to me is you're imprisoning them. I mean, that's so wrong to me. How do you're crippling your child? That's what you're doing. You're crippling your child. And what's going to happen when those parents aren't? I mean, so what are you going to do? She's, they may have siblings, but what? You're just going to pass the kid on to the sibling? What if the
Who
sibling
may
quit?
not be the right person.
Right.
to take
Exactly.
care of the child,
Yeah.
the adult
So
child.
I can't agree with that method. So anyway, so here's the scoop. So John was 3 years old, and his preschool teachers recommended that we test him. So we did and found out that he was mentally challenged. That was, I knew he was a little delayed. I had no idea it was that severe. So we kind of went through this grief, just like all the stages of grief. His father really was devastated over it. And of course, so was I, but you have to get on with it. So he went to regular school, and back then inclusion was really a big deal, and everybody wanted to take, the teachers all volunteered to take him, but they didn't know what to do with him. So I mean, they were wonderful. They and they did their best. And John got to the point, I think it was in fifth or sixth grade, and I said, enough. No, I can't watch this anymore. John has no friends. John is not included in anything. He has no social life. This is wrong. I don't like it. And his dad, were we divorced by then? I think we were.
You were.
Yeah, we were divorced by then.
Hmm.
I worked with a school psychologist, and I said, no, I don't agree with this inclusion business. It doesn't include anything. He's not included. What is he included in? The classroom? That doesn't help him. He still is struggling. He's not learning anything. I want him in a private school where he's with other special needs kids and he's included socially, and he's working with teachers that know how to deal with special needs children. And his dad was not in favor. He says, I know it doesn't make sense to you, but this is the best way to handle it. And I said, I disagree.
Okay, so stop for a second. Everybody needs to know John was was a principal. John is the former husband, biological
Great
dad,
teacher.
was an educator at the time. And so my point is always, it almost doesn't matter what you do for a living when it's your personal life that's being affected. You may go off the rails a little bit. You may not do what you would even suggest other people do. And that's where it gets very difficult as I watch people setting up separate households. That's where it gets very difficult to set your child up for independent living, getting them the right education, which then you hit on all these right points. You have a social life because you're with people that will accept you. And so
Mhm.
that's wonderful. And I do remember Jerry. I mean, he was a very popular kid in
He
school.
was. So all right. And please remember too, I was a teacher as well for 10 years. And I not now I was a music teacher. I worked in an elementary school, but I also had special needs classes. So I worked with special needs kids as well. And I did not like them in class with regular ed kids because they did not have any success with regular ed kids, but they had success when they were with their own level of children.
Right.
So, and that's what I wanted for John. I wanted John to succeed socially as well as, um, you know, educationally, whatever you want to call it. So
It was a journey.
it was. The school psychologist went with me to observe the school because she felt that it was necessary for me to see what went on at Tillotson. That was the name of the school.
I remember that.
Ironically, I taught at Tillotson. It was the school where I used to teach music
That's funny.
and where
Yeah.
his dad taught fourth grade.
Wow.
So we got there. I observed the class. One of the aide came up to me and said, oh, Mrs. McFadden, you taught me at this school. And I knew her. I remembered her. So it was funny. But anyway, he did thrive at that school. He was very popular. He had a lot of friends. He felt very good about himself. He felt empowered.
Yes, exactly. Now, the point of this show, again, is to establish a residential community a social community and a whole different approach to employment once people graduate from high school. So he graduated from high school, and the social net went away to a
Mhm.
large extent. Talk about that a minute.
And that was really upsetting to me. I thought, and this is something that happens in these groups. They don't know how to maintain friendships. It's something they cannot do. And I tried to form a group, but the parents are just as bad. They can't get on board either with this. They have their own lives. They're worried about their kids. They're doing whatever they're doing with their children. And they just couldn't, we couldn't gel. I couldn't get them to gel together and form a cohesive group so that the kids could remain friends. So it just kind of all fell apart.
Okay, let's pause that. That's really, really important because it takes the parents to interface with transportation.
Mhm.
And I guess, at least in this day and age, kids can call each other. So, Jerry, I know we didn't have cell phones back then.
Mhm.
We had landlines, but did John visit with anybody outside of school when he was in school?
Yes, he visited with a boy that lived in Brighton Heights, which was like an hour away. You have to remember, there was only Tillotson. So these kids would come from all over the tri-state area.
Hmm.
So he would visit with this one. He did visit with this one boy in Brookline, but he was very troubled, and I felt very uncomfortable with him.
Okay.
And then and John, who was a really good judge of character, actually ended the relationship. Um, he's still friends with Melissa.
Okay, so John was a babe magnet. I remember this. It didn't matter what wedding we went to, what grocery store we
Oh
went
God.
to. Like, girls were attracted to him. He's this giant teddy bear kind of person.
Hmm.
So
We
that's really good that
always
he's a good judge of character.
He is.
And even now, um, in his adult years, when I go to the mall with him, I live on the West Coast, Jerry lives on the East Coast. So, but I fly back a couple times a year. And my thing with John is we go to the mall, we go to lunch, we have our thing. And never fails, he knows somebody at the mall.
Always.
Never fails.
We were an hour away at the hospital visiting his father. He runs into somebody at the cafeteria.
You're kidding.
No, some woman that he knew who lives out here was visiting her dad in the hospital. We had just run down to grab a quick sandwich. He runs into somebody.
That's really interesting because it's like an hour-ish away from your house. John's father, Jerry's former husband, passed away a couple weeks ago. So they were visiting, last days spent. And this is what she's talking about. An hour away,
Hmm.
he knows somebody
Of
there.
course, no
Very
matter
interesting.
where we go.
Okay, so now
Mhm.
you, I didn't know you tried to form a group. That's really interesting. You tried to
Yeah.
form a group with other parents that you had known from Tillotson, the school,
Mhm.
and somehow they were resistant to
As if
connecting.
they just didn't seem to have an interest in it. So after he graduated, they had graduation parties, like picnics. And I would go, I'd bring John and I would talk to people about, would you like, if you would like to be put on a list and we'll all stay in touch with one another and get the kids together to do things. And they just didn't care.
Do you have any idea why? Okay,
Everybody's
so
in their own head. They're
okay,
just
so
in their own head.
this is really important because the statistic I gave at the top of this episode was 33% of parents in the United States, families have special needs children. It's such an important statistic. I got it from the Center for Disease Control, labor statistics. They have all this stuff. But it requires so the greatest fear of the parents is what's going to happen to my child when I die. Well, you have to prepare for that. We're not doing that in this episode. We will tackle that. You have to prepare for that. But how am I going to give my child the best life I can while I'm living? And what you said at the top, I wasn't ready for. The top of this episode was I've always prepared my children to be independent. And people don't think like that with special needs because they don't know what those options look like. And, or this is where I want you to weigh in, they don't want to commit the time and the energy. Where is this?
I think it's fear. All right. So John also has two very independent siblings, and he sees them and what they've accomplished and how they live, and he wants to emulate that. And so he got to the point in his life where he came to me and said, all right, I want my own apartment now. Now, what am I going to say? No. Oh, John, I'm so afraid for you to be alone. You're just not ready. I don't think you're ready to be on your own. No, I can't say that to him. No, it's all right. If you feel that way, let's try it. Let's do this. We'll get you set up. Let's get you on the list for housing, and we'll set you up in an apartment. This
Okay,
is
but
what's
wait,
going to happen.
I want to, I'll get that. I want to go back to the fear. I really want to focus on the importance of parents looking at what an independent life would look like, but independent with support. We know it can't be
Absolutely.
100% independent. But
Mhm.
what does that look like? Well, they have to have a social life like a normal person, like anybody. Sorry, but I don't mean to be disparaging when I use any words, but like us, like a
Mhm.
standard life. They need a social life, right?
Right.
And so you do have to set up transportation. And what are all the fear parts of letting your son or daughter go to the mall and eat at a restaurant? What are the fear parts there?
Well, you are afraid people are going to take advantage of them, and that they will hurt them.
Take advantage how? Financially?
Yes, take their money and not give them the correct change back.
Okay.
You're afraid they'll rob them. They'll listen, dude. I lost my phone. Can I borrow yours for just a second? I just have to make a quick call. And then they take their
Mm,
phone.
okay.
Now, John, we talk about this.
Do you?
Oh, of course. And what would you do if that happened? John already tells me, Mom, I like cargo pants because I put one wallet with my money in the bottom pocket, and in the top
Oh,
pocket, I put an empty wallet. So if anybody tries to take a wallet,
wow.
I
You're
give them that
kidding.
one, the one that has nothing in it.
Oh my.
Yeah, I know. He's pretty smart.
That's really impressive. You know, we have other relatives that have special needs kids, and we have sisters. I don't want to say their names. I don't like saying people's names if they're not here, but we have sisters on mom's side that I don't think one or both are deceased now. And they had a brother, and that brother was Down syndrome. And I was talking to one of our other cousins the other day. We're a very connected family. I was talking to one of our other cousins the other day who was much closer to these two sisters with their brother than we actually were. And I wanted to learn more about the sisters and how they raised their brother. And I said, well, did he have friends? And I was told no. And I said, is that because he didn't go anywhere? They didn't encourage friends? And I was told, well, they were godsends, the two sisters. They really raised him well, but they were his only friends. And so he had a happy life in the house, but he didn't have a life outside of the house. Do you know who I'm talking about,
I
right?
know who you're talking about. He did go to OVR. occupational vocational rehabilitation, and they would pack him a lunch, and he would go there every day.
Right.
So he did have somewhat of a life outside of
The
their
house.
house.
Okay.
And I happen to know one of his caretakers because I worked with her daughter years ago.
You
I'm
two
sorry,
know
Pittsburgh.
everybody. You and John know
Pittsburgh,
everybody.
Pittsburgh, no, that's Pittsburgh. We all are connected in this city. So it was really funny. It was really funny. And then, of course, that woman, ended up spending some time with John here in my house, helping him, with reading or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, it's a very small town, Pittsburgh.
Okay. So the whole point of this
Yeah,
is even if you have a special needs child, I guess it depends whether it's a functional disability, meaning blindness, or you're in a wheelchair, something like that, physically compromised, versus neurologically compromised, but you're functional. You could walk around, you can do things, you could get, well, yeah, you can do things. So you think it's, first of all, the fear of letting go that somebody may take advantage of and hurt your child.
correct.
How do you overcome that then, Jerry?
You just have to grow a spine and trust. You just have to feel the fear and do it anyway. That is my mantra. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Knock it off. You know, it's what I set John up in a rough part of town because I live in Washington County and it is rough in where there is public housing. There's not a lot of choices here. So no matter where he lives, it's rough. But here's the beauty of it. Everything is within walking distance. Everything. His his pharmacy, his grocery store, tons of little
Okay,
shops.
so hold on a minute now, because I know what people's reaction is going to be as you're talking.
Hmm.
How rough is rough that you're letting your son walk around? I mean,
Well,
how rough is rough, Jerry?
people don't walk around with guns. He's a block from the courthouse. There
Are
are
you,
police
do you
everywhere.
just mean it's a lower economic area?
Yes, it is a
It's not a
lower
high
economic area.
crime. We have to be careful the words we choose. It's not a high crime area,
It
or
is.
is it?
I
Why
don't
would you let your
recognize.
son live in a high crime area?
During the day, no, it is not a high crime area. At night, I told him I don't want him out. It's a city. I don't want him out.
Okay.
During the day,
Okay.
he's fine.
And you live in the suburbs, so that's a whole different vibe.
It
Okay.
is.
Um, yeah, I don't want people thinking that you're an irresponsible person putting your son in a high crime area. I mean, I didn't take it as that. I just thought, okay, lower economic, big deal.
One of the things that I did when he was moving in is I talked to a couple of residents. One of them, her name, she told me her name, and I said, "So how?" She looked like a nice lady, and I said, "So how long have you lived here?" And she said, 14 years. And I'm thinking, "Wow, you look good. You survived for 14 years." I
No
said, "Have you
bruises,
ever?"
no stitches, no broken
Oh, I
limbs.
said, "Have you ever had any trouble?" She said, "No." No, I
Okay.
said, "Do you feel safe here?" She said, "It's no less safe than anywhere else." She says, "I've been fine." I said, "Okay."
Okay. All right, very good. All right. So because I wanted to keep this within 30 minutes for just for people's ability to have the time to listen. And we're kind of closing in on that. Um, yes, you raised your children to be independent, and that included John.
Mhm.
You you tried to form parent groups of parents you met, special needs kids, when John was in school, so you
Mhm.
could continue the social network that was established during school.
Mhm.
And that was difficult because parents kind of let that go. So I
Yes.
think the two learning lessons in this episode are raise your children with an eye for independence, however that looks like with your specific child.
Right.
Now, you're lucky. I mean, John is far more functional than so many people. Yes, he
Hmm.
cannot read, he cannot write, he cannot count. And so when I've gone to the mall with him and I've stood there while he gets his wallet out and wants to pay for something, and I watched how he did that, and he said, I don't count well. What do you need? And I said to him, and I really believe this, and you can say whether you agree or disagree. Most people are not going to cheat you. Most people at the cash register are going to look at you and they're going to be kind. What do
Yeah,
you think? Am I wrong?
you are not wrong. That most people are honest and decent. They really are.
Okay. So I really want people to embrace this because it's important for independence if your child cannot count. You have to have them be just open and just say, I can't count. How much does this cost? How much do I have here? Take what you need, give me back the change. And
Mhm.
you rarely have a problem. Number two, they need to socialize.
They
They
do.
need to get out.
They do. And they need to get out on their own without you.
Okay,
If they can.
So when John was with his friend, the Melissa,
Hmm.
you took turns with her mother, picking up, driving them to the mall, picking them up from the mall, getting them home, and that seemed to work just fine,
Oh.
or wherever they went.
Mhm.
Um, and I know we didn't talk about the employment piece in this episode. We talked about living independently, setting your kids up for that. They will thrive if you can do that because there's self-worth involved.
Mhm.
There's accomplishment involved when they can come home, they're fine, they had a great day out, and there's a future.
You need to empower your children. You do. They need to feel empowered. They need to feel that they're accomplishing.
Everybody does.
They do. They need a purpose.
Yes,
All need a
Jerry, that was
purpose.
excellent. Continue. They need a purpose.
And John wants to work. He really wants to work.
And he's worked many different jobs.
He has.
And so now that he's in a housing group, it's called Section 8 housing. Not every state has that. We do in California, you do in Pennsylvania, Section 8 housing, which means low cost for people that need low cost. And it works off of a percentage of income
Mhm.
and then subsidized by the government beyond that, correct?
Correct.
And John actually was in a sweet job. He's worked at the major grocery store chain, he's worked in retail, other than that. And he had this dream job at the VFW where they were very empowering. They tried expanding his work duties, but unfortunately, it was too far away from where he's living now, opposite direction. And so he now has to look for work. So we're going to pick that up in another episode, how the employment piece works. And I'm very big on we just don't put them in jobs that are square peg and round holes, like the least thinking necessary. For some people, being a bagger in a grocery store is great. As a first job, it's great, but people need to grow. And so we're
Well,
gonna
me-
we're gonna pick that up later. But I think the two things that you said that were phenomenal, Jerry, in this episode was raising the children to be independent and creating a social network for them, getting over the parental fear that something will happen so that
Mhm.
they can live.
Mhm.
Any last parting comments before we close?
Feel the fear and do it anyway. Don't
Feel,
let your fear hold your child back.
I love that. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Don't let your fear hold your child back. All right, your son is now trying to get in because
Okay.
my next episode is with him.
All right, Jude.
All right, Jeri, thank you so much. We will talk
Welcome.
soon. And everybody, this was a great episode. Think about it. And we're going to circle back and continue on with everything we have to do to give your child the best life possible while you're here.
Thanks, Jude.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jeri. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon.